The rain slicked the ancient stones of St. James's Palace, a fortress of tradition that has seen the rise and fall of empires, but rarely has it witnessed a moment as cold or as calculated as the one that unfolded within its heavily guarded archives. Only a few minutes ago, the silence of the royal corridors was shattered by the quiet leak of a sealed financial dossier, a document that stripped away the carefully curated veneer of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex to reveal a truth that Prince Harry has spent 3 agonizing years trying to bury. This is no longer a matter of whispers or the speculative chatter of the tabloid press. We're looking at a verified, forensic, and catastrophic deficit of $16 million. For years, the public was led to believe that the friction between Montecito and London was merely a clash of personalities, a family feud fueled by hurt feelings and memoirs. But as the pages of this leaked audit turn, it becomes clear that the endgame was never about an apology. It was about an audit. While the world watched King Charles III seemingly prepare for a festive season of reconciliation, a ghost summit was taking place in the dead of night. Unmarked Range Rovers didn't pull up to the palace for a celebratory dinner. They arrived for an emergency financial autopsy. The senior royals were not there to discuss forgiveness or the mending of bridges. They were there to discuss solvency, and the decision they reached changes the very architecture of the British monarchy. To understand the sheer scale of the panic now crossing the Atlantic, one must look at the man who presided over that mahogany table. It was not a diplomat or a courtier trained in the art of soft words. It was Sir Michael Stevens, the keeper of the Privy Purse, known in the inner sanctum of the palace as the Living Ledger. For Stevens, the monarchy is not a soap opera or a family business. It is a global corporation that must remain bulletproof against financial contagion. The report he laid before King Charles and Prince William was a cold, clinical dissection of a slow-motion disaster. "The subject, Your Majesty," Stevens reportedly began, "is not scandal. It is mathematics." The dossier revealed the anatomy of a $16 million evaporation, a terrifying blueprint of what happens when one attempts to live like a king without the benefit of a kingdom. The first and deepest incision in the audit was the real estate anchor. Stevens pointed to the $9.5 million outstanding mortgage on the Montecito estate, but it wasn't the principal that chilled the room. It was the volatile nature of the debt. Analysts noted that the loan, likely tied to variable interest rates in a fluctuating U.S. economy, had become a white elephant that was actively consuming cash. The property taxes, the astronomical staffing costs, and the relentless maintenance of those famous gardens created a burn rate that demands a Hollywood blockbuster level of income every single year. The problem, as the audit highlighted, is that Harry has not had a blockbuster in a long time. The vanity tax followed, a staggering $4 million attributed to Prince Harry's relentless obsession with litigation. Sir Michael Stevens detailed the catastrophic losses in the High Court, focusing particularly on the failed Ravick case, where Harry sued to retain taxpayer-funded police protection. Not only did he lose the battle, but he was ordered to pay the legal costs of the opposing side. It was described by those in the room as burning through capital just to buy a silence that never arrived. Finally, the audit turned to the paranoia premium, the $2.5 million projected for private security. Having lost the protection of the Met Police, Harry replaced them with a private army of ex-Navy SEALs and elite contractors who charge by the hour. Stevens argued that such an expense is fundamentally unsustainable. Harry is attempting to maintain the security detail of a head of state on the fluctuating budget of a content creator. The conclusion was brutal. This wasn't bad luck. It was structural insolvency. Harry's business model loses money every time he wakes up. The Netflix and Spotify millions have either dried up or been reinvested into a lifestyle that has no ceiling, while his income has hit a definitive floor. As the weight of that $16 million figure settled over the Oak Room, the mood shifted from paternal concern to institutional resolve. King Charles, looking every bit a man torn between his crown and his child, reportedly spoke first. His instinct was one of mercy. He saw the $16 million as a humiliation that could tarnish the House of Windsor forever and suggested a private settlement, a quiet loan from his personal funds to clear the debts and keep his son out of a U.S. bankruptcy court. "We cannot have a son of the king evicted," he allegedly pleaded, fearing a global spectacle that the palace could not control. But the Prince of Wales did not look at his father. He looked at the future. In a move that signaled the end of the old guard, William reached into his briefcase and produced a document bound in black, the Commercial Liability Assessment. "This is not about saving Harry," William stated, his voice cutting through the room like a razor. "This is about funding our own destruction." William's argument was that bailing Harry out would be a strategic blunder of historic proportions. He pointed out that Harry's only consistent product is his own family. Every time the palace provides a financial lifeline, it gives Harry the stability to launch a new attack. If they cleared his debts, they would essentially be subsidizing the next memoir or the next damaging interview. Princess, and often described as the most pragmatic member of the firm, leaned forward to deliver the final verdict. She viewed the situation not through the lens of family, but as a military operation. She looked at the $16 million debt as a symptom of a deeper pathology. "Trauma explains behavior, Charles," she reportedly said, "but it does not excuse financial recklessness, and it certainly does not authorize him to sell the family's privacy to pay for it." She used a metaphor that ended all debate. "The monarchy is a ship of state, and a captain cannot allow a sailor to drill holes in the hull just because he is seasick. You do not comfort him by letting him sink the ship. You put him ashore." She officially labeled Harry a toxic asset, something that drains capital while providing no value and carrying immense risk. With William controlling the Duchy of Cornwall funds and refusing to let a single pound cross the Atlantic, the king was outnumbered. The emotional argument had shattered against the wall of institutional necessity. The result of this summit was the birth of the St. James Protocol. This was not a public statement or a press release. It was a directive for financial strangulation. The protocol, initialed by both the King and the Prince of Wales, established three impenetrable pillars. First, the sovereign firewall, an absolute ban on any bailouts, personal or official. Even in the event of foreclosure or bankruptcy, the palace would not intervene. Second, the global credit freeze. The royal household would quietly inform international financial institutions that the Duke of Sussex is a financially independent entity with no royal collateral or guarantees. This shattered the invisible credit rating Harry had used to secure his lifestyle. Third, the legal firewall. All communication from Montecito would henceforth be routed to external lawyers, severing the direct line to the king's checkbook. The Bank of Pa was not just closed. The accounts had been deleted from the system 5,000 miles away. The sun rose over Montecito, unaware that the tectonic plates of the Sussex world had shifted. Prince Harry reportedly entered his study that Tuesday morning with the same confidence he had held for 40 years, the unshakable belief that no matter how deep the hole, his family would eventually fill it with gold. He was waiting for a confirmation code, a wire transfer, a sign that his father had folded. Instead, he received a phone call that will likely haunt his financial future. It wasn't the friendly voice of a palace aide. It was the cold, clinical tone of an external legal counsel. When Harry's team pushed back, citing the urgency of the mortgage and the pressure from creditors, the response was devoid of emotion. "The household is strictly prohibited from facilitating personal credit arrangements. The request is denied." The line went dead. This was followed by an email that acted as a final insult, an invoice for outstanding renovation costs at Frogmore Cottage. The palace was no longer his benefactor. They were his creditors. Harry's attempts to bypass the bureaucracy failed. The back-channel phone numbers had been changed. The private servers returned an access denied message. The gray zone where he could be half in and half out had been systematically dismantled. Standing on his terrace in the California sun, the distance between him and London must have felt infinite. For 5 years, he had waged a war against his family, assuming that at the end of the day, they were still his family. He assumed the Bank of Pa was an entitlement of his birthright. But the St. James Protocol proved that the king had been overruled by the monarch. The palace wasn't fighting him with words anymore. They were treating him with the most devastating weapon in their arsenal: silence.